Blog Talk Radio.
Paranormal Review Radio.
Hello and welcome, everyone. It is Friday night, and you are listening to Paranormal Review Radio, the only radio show without commercials and with more great paranormal talk. I'm Anthony in New York.
And I'm Luci Liebfried in Chicago. Are you ready for another Paranormal Friday night? We are so happy you can join us tonight. We welcome all of our regular listeners and those of you who have turned in for the very first time. Now, if you have a question for our guest, or about the topic tonight, please feel free to ask us in the chat room or call into the show at 661-244-9831. We will try to get to you as soon as we can. Don't forget that you can always send us an email with future topics that you'd like to see on the show, or if you just want to say hi. Our email address is paranormalreviewradio@yahoo.com. And last but not least, check us out on our Facebook show page and on our YouTube channel for more information on the paranormal and upcoming shows.
The movie The Conjuring is set to be released in theaters next Friday, July 19th by Warner Brothers. The movie has a great cast of characters like Vera Farmiga, Patrick Wilson, and my favorite actress, Lily Taylor. The basis of the movie is from a true story and depicts paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren who work to help a family terrorized by a dark presence in their farmhouse. Forced to confront a powerful entity, the Warrens find themselves caught in the most terrifying case of their lives. The horrific paranormal case affected a family in 1970 on a farmhouse in Rhode Island. The Perron family moved into this home in the hopes to start a new life, but what they received was nothing but the opposite. Andrea Perron was the daughter living in this house for 10 years, and after 30-plus years, finally came to grips with her childhood reality and wrote a masterful book called House of Darkness, House of Light, The True Story, Volumes 1, 2, and hopefully soon to be released Volume 3. Before heading out to the movies, let's talk to the brave woman who lived the story. Please give a warm welcome to Andrea Perron. Hi, Andrea. How are you tonight?
Oh, hi. Thank you so much for inviting me on your broadcast. It's a thrill to be here. It's delightful.
Great.
Hi,
Same
Andrea.
Here.
Welcome
Hi,
to the show. You know what? Can you believe it? The Conjuring, a major motion picture, is set to be released that tells the story of your childhood. How exciting is that?
Well, you know what's really exciting? My sister Nancy just drove up from Florida today. She had a major blowout in her car in the high-speed lane on I-75 North. And the state police officer pulled off and made sure nobody hit her while she changed the tire. And that's just one part of my day today. There's a slight amount of angst, and I've been working since 5:30 this morning. I am pumped with caffeine. And the way I look at this, I mean, your intro could not have been a classier act. And so now I'm going to punctuate it with, I know it's going to be a rockin' good time because your intro song is a song about getting laid. I mean, I'm sitting there listening to it. I'm like, what have I gotten myself into here? And how am I going to get out of it? And then all of a sudden I hear these incredibly well-spoken words, incredibly well-crafted writing, in your intro piece. And I'm thinking, okay, 180.
It's a little sexier paranormal song.
It is. It just is.
You know, that's the first time I've ever heard it being described like that.
Well, but those are the words. All I did was repeat the lyrics. Well, see, I listened to everything. That's what got me in trouble. That's why I remembered everything that happened at the farm.
Well, you know what? That song was actually written specifically for us.
Well, that's something to be proud of.
Yeah.
It's actually a very good song. I enjoyed it. So we're going to have a nice time tonight. I'm coming off a huge high because in about, I would say between a 16 to 18-hour period on Wednesday into the wee hours of Thursday morning, I did a series of interviews and reached millions and millions of people around this country, and suddenly probably 30, 40 million people that I got to speak to directly midweek. And something happened, and it felt like the whole earth shifted, and I realized all of a sudden that people do know about this story and that it is being discovered, because I believe, well, first of all, let me focus just for a couple of minutes on The Conjuring, because when I say it's a phenomenal film, I mean that in every conceivable sense of the word. It is literally breathtaking in that it will rob you of your ability to breathe for moments, and it will impale images in your mind that you will remember for the rest of your life. And people should know that before they go, and no one should bring children to see this film, because children should be allowed to be children as long as possible. So, you know, this coming from someone who never saw a full horror film in her life until I saw The Conjuring. But I don't think of it as a horror film at all. My sister and I sat there. I was invited out with Mrs. Warren for a private screening at the end of March, and we reunited after 40 years, and it was a really remarkable trip. And we sat there and cried right through the whole thing, because it was the fulfillment of a promise that she made to her husband before he died, to have this story told, to find a way to tell this story. And I was sitting there in her presence as her dream was reaching its fulfillment. You know, really the pinnacle of her success as the godmother, the grandmother, the matriarch of the paranormal movement. It's a virtual movement. You know, 4 or 5 years ago, I thought, wow, I wonder if there's anybody that's going to really be interested in this story. And I Googled paranormal, and I was blown away. I was blown away because all those decades, I didn't know that there was this huge body of people, you know, coming together worldwide that were sharing, like-minded individuals, a lot who are very seriously into the scientific aspects of determining what this is exactly, and a lot of faith-based and spiritual people. It's a wonderful community. So, you know, we sat there and we cried because I heard Lily Taylor at the top of a staircase that looked remarkably like the one that we were so terrified of at the farm, and scream my name to come help her. And that was the thing in this film. They got that. They got that you could scream, you could beg, you could exert all your physical energy to try to get the attention of another mere mortal who was just a couple of rooms away at most and could not be heard. Cindy described it as being in the bubble. And we all experienced that time warp, that suspension of time in that house. It's a portal, cleverly disguised as a farmhouse, a portal to the past and a portal to the future. And what James Wan did masterfully in this film was weave the fabric of our story, Mr. and Mrs. Warren's story, into a story of its own. There are elements of it that are slightly fictionalized. There are things, it's not, you can't condense 10 years into 2 hours, but they very skillfully chose elements of the story that paint the full picture with a broad brush, and knowing, and they knew, these people are very smart, they knew the whole story was in the books, that's where the fine lines of history lay. Mm-hmm. So
were you able
had
to
freedom.
Were you able to consult or give any insight during the making of the film?
I gave them quite a bit of information. Well, Volume 1 was already in the public domain. I didn't even have to worry about that. I knew they had that. But right. I gave them about 75 pages in treatment, of major stories, and then a very detailed timeline of events which occurred in the house. And what they did was amalgamate that. Chad and Carrie Hayes wrote, I believe, to be the best script they've ever written. And they were truly emotionally invested in this project. And they worked and worked and worked till they got it right, till they hit perfect pitch with it. And that took a little bit of time, but they did manage to take the most important things that we experienced in that house and just weave them together with the story from the perspective of the Warrens, while they also told the career story of the Warrens. Mm-hmm. And that's how those two elements mesh together is masterful as well. I'll tell you, when I first when the project was first proposed to me, I was reticent because the biggest risk I took of all was signing the rights to our names and likenesses over to a major motion picture studio.
Yeah.
Really, of all the risks I took, that was the biggest leap of faith, because I was trusting in God and the universe that it went into the hands of the right people, and it did. Mm. And when I first heard James Wan was the director, I said, oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. I was shocked. I thought, king of slasher porn. I never saw any of his films, but he's 15, and, actually he's not. He just looks like a boy, but he's actually a full-grown, very mature, incredibly intelligent, very intense individual. And he's so focused on what he does and makes sure that it's to his... He scrutinizes every little thing, but you know what really impressed me about him? We didn't want the children to be as traumatized by making this film as we were by living these events, some of the events that they recreated. Mm. They did have to lay still in those beds while all those photographs came crashing down on that wall and not move and not jump as they were being filmed. And that's how it really was. Nobody could hear something like that happen. You'd get up and there'd be this huge mess or this major disruption, or mom sitting on the sofa trembling, and you knew something terrible had happened. It's surreal. It's living in surreality.
Right.
Well, you know what? I'm happy that you feel that they, stayed true to this story. And I think that it's absolutely beautiful that Lorraine was able to, fulfill her promise to Ed. But I want to ask about you, and I want to ask about the book. Your book, which is called House of Darkness, House of Light, The True Story. This is 3 volumes, and it's over 1,300 pages, and it's truly the chronicle of your family and all of the things that happened while you lived in that house. I want to ask you, after finishing this book, do you feel that you accomplished what you set out to do and say when this whole thing began?
What an excellent question. Well, you should come with me on all my interviews and just tell the reporter what to ask. Wow. That is a wonderful question, and I have a wonderful answer for you. And that answer is yes. On one level, I hope that by telling the story, not only our story, which was, I think, cathartic and healing for us in many respects, even though there were times we fought like dogs, it was very important to get all of this out and into the world, and we put out about 95%. There were some incidents at the house that I really don't believe we'll ever share outside of our own family, but most of it is out there in the public domain now, and that is so important to me because it brings great peace, a sense of hope, and a safety net for people to feel that it's all right to have faith. It's all right to accept your own immortality. It's that great, the big chill where a peer group has to come to terms with their own mortality because they've lost one of their own. I do a presentation called The Biggest Chill, and that's the quantum leap that we're having to take into the fourth dimension now as everyone starts to understand that there's a shift, the holy shift is happening. And in that process, people's eyes are opening, but more importantly, third eyes are opening around the world. And there is a sense that there is something more. That's what I wanted to give people. That's the gift. And I thought the only way to do this is to do it my own way, and to write the history, the philosophy, the theology, the religion into it, to tell the whole comprehensive story of what happened to us over the course of a decade and more, because it begins before we move to the farm, and it completes at the end of Volume 3 with our time in the Salicoa Valley of Georgia after we left the farm, and my mother's harsh realization that attachments do occur. So it's a full chronicle of events, but it also takes people on the journey with us, and that's been the most satisfying, fulfilling aspect of it. I've received hundreds, probably thousands by now, letters of people who say, you grabbed me by the necktie and dragged me into your world. Thank you very much. I'll never think or feel the same way again about anything. We as a race, we as mortals are coming into a new self-awareness, and I do believe personally a new age. And in the process of that occurring, there are going to be enlightening stories that emerge. We waited 30 years. The world was not ready for this. This is not hyperbole. I am telling you that 45 years ago, when our journey began in 1970, 43 years ago, this wasn't something we could talk about with people. We learned very quickly that there would be ramifications if we did so. And now, try to find a cable station that doesn't have a paranormal story running on it at any given time.
Right.
It has permeated people's consciousness, and it's it's no longer taboo. It is a far more acceptable form of discourse, and it's extremely important discourse, because I left that farm with many more questions than answers. But one thing I absolutely know without a doubt is that there is something which exists beyond our mortal existence. Our spirit, our soul transcends, our energy transmutes. Something happens, that we are living simultaneously in multiple dimensions, that there is a fourth dimension, and that we as a race consciousness can no longer afford to live a one-dimensional reality. We have to see the world and the universe for what it really is, because great revelations are coming. I'm not being Nostradamus. I'm telling you that great revelations are coming, and that people are going to need to come to grips with the reality and the surreality. And we moved into that house as a normal family, and we left it as a paranormal family. And my mother says, once that door is opened, it cannot be closed. You can turn your back on it like the new moon. You can pretend it's not there in the sky, but it damn well is. And, Christine says, time does not heal all wounds, and she's right about that. But if it had, and if we had been able to bury, forget, suppress these memories effectively and never talk about this, that would have been a crime against humanity, because this is not the kind of story that one should rightfully take to the grave. This is the truth. We don't care if people don't believe us anymore. We've all reached an age of enlightenment, self-awareness, and the age of reason. We don't care who doesn't believe this. It's the people that do believe us and know that this is an important, significant story. Ed and Lorraine Warren both maintained all these years that this was the most significant, most compelling, most disturbing of all of the investigations that they ever conducted over a 50-year career together. And when they approached my mother after we moved to Georgia in 1980 and offered her the moon to tell this story, she declined with good reason and asked Mrs. Warren not to ask her again. And Mrs. Warren never did.
Do you think that, I mean, looking back at what you went through and family and everything else, do you think that it was meant for you, for your family, to move into that home and to live what you lived through for those 10 years and you know, afterwards, all these years afterwards, to go through what you have gone through? Do you think that that's the purpose of your life?
What you're basically asking me is what you tried to get me the answer in the previous question. And I have to say that you are right, and I will give you a forthright answer on that. Yes, I do believe that it was my destiny. And I also know that there were two spirits in the house, a very small girl who my sister Cindy said was the spitting image of me. And there was also an elderly woman who I encountered once and only once in the house, dressed in 17th century garb, and her facial features, her eyes, every element of her was a mirror reflection of myself as an old woman. And so I feel that on some level we are recycled souls, and for some reason I had been called in a familial way back to that house. But so had everyone else in my family. My mother found it and was so driven to own it. And then when my father saw it, from the first day that we went to that farm, we did not want to go back to our little house in Cumberland. We didn't ever want to leave the farm again. It was more than a calling. It was a directive.
Wow. You know what? I'm sorry. You mentioned, I did read that your mother, she's Cherokee.
Yes.
So I'm assuming, I'm Cherokee, so I understand. So I would say that her connection with the other side is very, very close. Now, you mentioned that when Lorraine approached her to talk about this, how did all of this affect your mother? Was there any kind of Native American connection to what was going on?
Well, I think that there's always a Native American connection to what's going on, because the Native Americans have and continue to teach the world how to worship properly, and that is to worship the earth and the universe. I mean, it's such a deep spirituality that's intrinsic to one's being, and that's what I have encountered, not only in my mother, but in every American Indian that I have ever befriended, truly gotten to know, an ingrained spirituality and a very efficient use of the senses. So, yes, I don't know. I mean, the Nipmuc tribe occupied that valley before that land was deeded in 1680. And the house as it is now was completed in 1736. but my little sister April on multiple occasions saw a group of Indian children playing in the woods behind the house, and came home describing in great detail what they were wearing, what their faces looked like, what kind of games they were playing. And they were darting in and out of a pine grove that did not exist there when they actually lived. So there was a very marked crossing over between dimensions that she reported as no more than a 7 or 8-year-old. And it wasn't just the house, it was the barn, it was the property. There's something there that alters time, suspends time, and there's a warping of the light there at that time, that crossing between twilight, dusk, and dawn, that is absolutely supernatural. It is unlike any place I've ever seen. I've lived in many places. I've traveled many more. And I've never seen light like that in that place. So I hope that people read this. I hope that by writing this book, well, first of all, I did not feel the need to breed. So now I feel like I'm in the final phase of bringing triplets into the world, and I'm leaving something behind. And that's great. And really a lot less painful, I suspect. So I'm good with that, leaving something behind. I've got way more story to tell, but I want to tell it from a different perspective, in a different style now. I don't know where I'm going to go with it. I want to tell, and have already agreed to tell, the story of the people who've now lived there for, close to 3 decades. So good friends of mine, lovely, lovely people that occupy the house now. And, there's more to this. There really is. But to get the first 3 books, to get the trilogy out, that completes for me, I think, one element of my destiny, and in some ways opens other doors as well, because I'm just one of the messengers. There are a lot of people roaming this planet right now, and there are a lot of children coming into their own on this planet right now that will ultimately be the ones that determine the course of our evolution. The people that I believe will guide others into a safe space and into an awareness that they must attain for us to continue on. We need to get to the true end of the Piscean age. We need to open our eyes to the dawning of the age of Aquarius and see the light for what it is. And H.P. Lovecraft said that the revelations which are forthcoming will either drive us mad or into a new dark age. But I don't believe that at all. I think that we're just at the very beginning and a dawn of a new age that will be the salvation for this planet. And I truly believe that. And if I didn't, I wouldn't have any reason to be here anymore.
Beautifully said. The title of your book, House of Darkness, House of Light, to me, it sort of is an indication or a metaphor or a metaphor for good and evil. Do you believe that your experiences, or for that matter, any person's life, all has some level of struggle between good and evil in their life?
Yes, I think it's omnipresent like God. Every single one of us is capable of committing acts of evil, and most of us, on some level, have done so in our lives, have either been deliberately cruel to another human being, have hurt an animal, have, you know what I'm saying? I mean, as we grow, as we mature, sometimes we make very big mistakes in this life, and there are people who consider an act of evil stepping on an ant deliberately. I kind of fall into that category, although I'll kill a spider in a flat butt second if it crosses my threshold. All bets are off if you come in the door. But, other than that aside, I really do believe, gosh, the best way for me to put this, I think, is I really do believe that we're taking a quantum leap in consciousness right now as a planet. And I see it's almost like watching dominoes fall perfectly. There's like an alignment occurring. You know, tell me if I got too far off subject, but that's really an important thing to address, because it's our acceptance of fear. It's our acceptance of fear, our embracing our own human frailty to fear anything that causes it to dissipate into the ether. It robs it of its power. And that's what we came to terms with in the house. And that's how we came to terms of endearment. And I can tell you that I love the spirits. I even love Bathsheba because of what she's taught me. Those 10 years of my life were the foundation of all I became later. It was instilling in me a sense of purpose, direction. I knew from a very early age I'd be the one to tell this story someday. I just didn't know how far away someday was. And I also knew that it gifted me with the knowledge that I can live fearlessly, because it's not just ashes to ashes, dust to dust, that the spirit lives on in some form, that there is something beyond our mortal existence that continues on beyond this life, and that when the vessel dies, we go into a form of metamorphosis. And I don't know what it means. I don't know any more now at 54 than I did when I was 12 about how all of it works. And you know what? I guarantee you that no one else does either, because if we don't understand it, no one does.
Right.
And so anybody that tells you they know definitively, this is how it is, this is the answer, no one knows. It is the greatest mystery of life, is the afterlife. But that the afterlife exists at all is a miracle to me. And from the day we moved into that house and I saw a full-body apparition that I greeted, because he was so solid that I thought he was a living, breathing human being. When he vaporized in front of Nancy, she got the impression that he might be something other than a human being, and was so stunned by that it wasn't something she even shared with anybody for 5 or 6 months afterwards, because it had to sink in. The world had to be ready for this story. We had to be prepared to tell it. That was really the biggest thing. We had to be ready. And
you had to be ready to tell your mom and dad, right?
Whew. They were the ones that were absolutely the most willing now. They both, in their 70s, think that it is important, and they don't want to leave this earth without seeing the truth told. You know, so many people knew what was happening at our house or experienced things there. Many, many people. And a number of people who were close friends, loving friends of ours, who had manifestations at that house died bizarre or incredibly premature deaths. And we lost dear, loving, wonderful people in our lives, 7 of them, the exact number of the size of our family.
Wow.
You know, so when people say, oh, you're a survivor, I used to be uncomfortable with the use of that word, but I'm not anymore, because we were lucky to survive. Whatever overtook my mother in that house the night of the seance with the Warrens was not of this world. It did not speak a language that is spoken on this planet, and was able to, what I saw happen, I never ever want to see anything like that again in my life. I'll never participate in another spiritual exercise ever. And, well, I didn't participate in that. I was, eavesdropping and sneak peeking. But you can open a door that you're not capable of closing, and I believe that's what happened with the Warrens. They were not prepared for what happened that night. No one was. And it altered all of our lives, all of our lives. Every witness to that event was permanently, inexorably altered that night. It was that important.
And yet, after you just said what you've just said, you call your story a love story.
Oh, it is. I mean, it's the love of our family and the bond between, well, the real bond, the most important bond was mother and children. And, let it be said here tonight, my mother would never have done anything ever to hurt any of her children. I just want that out there in cyberspace.
Right.
But I will tell you that it's beyond beyond being able to express with words, if you understand what I mean. It's more
absolutely.
Yes.
It's an emotional. I love the spirits. I love them. They're in the acknowledgments in Volume 3. They were as much a part of telling this story as I was, in many respects, because there were many times I said, this is too big for me. What was I thinking? Really, there were nights I pushed away from the desk and something pushed me back up against it, and I was absolutely alone, or so I thought. That whole sense, just keep going. Just a quiet knowing, just keep going. And it was a tumultuous experience, but when you're dealing with good and evil, darkness and light, my mother named the book. I was a third of the way through the manuscript, and she walked up to my desk one day, and she put her hands on my shoulders and leaned over and said, what are you going to call this? And, she saw I was up to like page 400, and she was starting to really take notice of what I was pumping out. And I said, I don't know yet. And she said, House of Darkness, House of Light. And I just looked at her like, well, what a nice ring that has to it. And then before I could even say anything, she said, because it was both. We've had some of the very best times of our lives at the farm. We learned things that most people are never privileged to learn firsthand. We all came to terms with our own mortality and immortality. None of us live recklessly, well, except for April, but none of us live, well, and Nancy, oh God, and Cindy sometimes, but most of us don't live recklessly. I don't live recklessly, but I do live fully because I know that there is something that the knowledge that I gather, that was always the thing that disturbed me most. I thought, if we just die, isn't everything we've learned in life just gone to waste? And now I know that's not the case. It's almost like we come to this planet to absorb, like a la SpongeBob, everything that we can take in and then take it someplace else and dump it into this huge, vast receptacle of knowledge and do it all over again. As though we're filling up this cosmic well somewhere. I would rather think that than think that it was wasted. My mother promised me before she leaves me that we will mind meld, because she's probably read 4,000 or 5,000 books in her life, and I want all of it. I do. I want all of it. You don't get to take that with you.
That's wonderful.
It's a wonderful life. It's a wonderful life, and we should all look forward to the fact that we have already entered the beginning of the end of the nuclear age with the Fukushima Daiichi disaster. 4 out of 5 of those nuclear reactors are in full, complete meltdown. Who's talking about that? Who's talking about that? Instead, we're talking about a movie called The Conjuring. But the fact of the matter is that they're inextricably linked.
Yep.
That we need to see. You get it. I knew you'd get that. And
Lucy
the day that my first book was published is the day that disaster happened. As my book was walking in the door, the earthquake happened in Japan.
There are synchronicities that you know, the synchronicities that we just are not paying attention to, that are that we come across. Everyone comes across them every day of their lives, but it's a matter of whether or not your eyes are open and you are awake to be able to, first off, to see them, and then two, to actually incorporate them and accept them into your life. And if you don't, you may be missing some messages along the way that you should be gathering. And for what you've just said, that comes to mind, and that's, I think, a perfect example of synchronicity.
I agree with you completely. And it's a beautiful thing. There's a poetry and a symmetry about it. There's a, coincidence doesn't exist. It's a word that, and a concept that we made up to explain away the otherwise inexplicable in life. When you are aware of your environment and all of your sensory perceptions are working in high gear, including your sixth sense, and you're revved, when you reach that pinnacle of awareness in your world and you're literally living in the moment, noticing everything about your life, that's a state of perpetual meditation. That is a spiritual lamentation. And that's what these books are. And in a perfect world where everybody was in sync in terms of interpretation, that's how it would be read. It would be read as a very long, deep, intense meditation. And then, of course, I'll, tell a story about the horse eating Dad's silk shirt, and it breaks it up, and you laugh a little bit and see that, it wasn't the horse, it was the cow, Fawn. Oh, my God, she was the best cow of all time. I loved Fawn. Oh, we loved the farm. We loved the light of the farm. Even the light at twilight was enchanting. It was a spectacular place to live. Absolutely. We froze just about to death, between cold, real cold, and supernatural cold. We were cold almost all the time in that house for one reason or another. Wow. And that was the hardship of it. I mean, when you live in a clapboard house with no insulation and it's, 10, 15 below zero, you are going to feel it. And that's the reason why my mother opened the fireplace and disturbed everything. That's what really set everything off at full tilt, was when she ripped off the facade of the fireplace in the parlor, because we had a woodshed full of beautiful seasoned hardwood that needed only to be split and stacked, and some of it already was. And she needed to get warm. After 4 or 5 months, I think it was April of the first year that we moved in. We moved in January, and, that first night, my little sister Cindy was in bed with me saying, I hear voices. There's a lot of voices, but they're all saying the same thing at the same time, and they're telling me there are 7 dead soldiers buried in the wall. And I thought, well, this doesn't bode well.
Gosh.
Well, all of these experiences, just listening to you speak and reading your words, I mean, they have definitely worked to make you the person that you are. The awareness, the spirituality, the connection with the universe. But I really do want to ask you, had anything like this ever happened to anyone in your family before you moved to the farm?
Only one incident, and my mother did not remember it until she returned to a Cherokee ancestral valley in Cherokee County when we left the farm and moved there. And then she remembered what she had seen as a child. And that's in Volume 3, and I won't say more than that. But that vision I need to spring that on the world. So I beg your pardon not sharing in full. But she had a very, very profound spiritual experience in the valley in Salakoa. And she remembered what she had seen as a child and what she had told her mother. And that was the only time in her life prior to moving to the farm that she had an experience like that. So I'm not surprised that something called my mother. Everything. You've read it, everything fell perfectly into place for us to have that piece of property, a virtually unaffordable piece of property, including, and I didn't even put it in the book, it seemed minor at the time, although I wish I had included it. My sister Christine, after Mom found the farm and we all went and fell in love and didn't want to leave and felt like we were, there permanently, and perhaps we are, Christine went into school and she started telling her classmates, oh, we're going to move, which was a premature thing. There was not even a bona fide figure set or anything. No negotiation had gone on yet, and Christine said, we're going to move, we're buying a farm, it's so gorgeous. And the girl sitting next to her happened to be the niece of the woman that used to own the house and sold it to us in Cumberland. And her sister wanted to buy the house, and the deal was already done, sealed, signed, and delivered before my parents had even closed on the farm. So we were essentially renting our own home in Cumberland while they were getting the rest of the funds that they needed together for a down payment on the estate, the Arnold estate.
Wow.
I'm telling you.
Well, I mean, talking
the
about...
strangest thing, though, if I could
Sure.
just indulge me one more minute, I think that in terms of all of the events which occurred prior, the things that catapulted us into that piece of property and sent my mother to go empty our family bank account to secure it while my father was in absentia, which, by the way, the current owner, she did exactly the same thing, never knowing what my mother had done. She did exactly the same thing. That is an aside. But, the strangest thing of all is that when my father brought the puppy home and my mother said 2.5 years, at least 2 years, maybe 2.5 years prior to her finding the advertisement for this piece of property, she held the puppy in her arms and she looked up into the heavens and she said, this dog is special. She needs a special name, Bathsheba.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Amazing.
We just abbreviated it. We didn't know what Bathsheba was or who
Right.
she was or what significance she played in world history, so we just called her Sheba. But she died a bizarre and heinous death right in front of all of us, and that's what just threw my mother over the edge to see her children suffer the way that we did over the loss of our dog.
Mm-hmm.
It was horrible, and it begins the book in a way that may be difficult for some readers, but it's important because you see, whatever was going on that was a light leading us to the farm was also a darkness that was pushing us and drawing us across the threshold simultaneously. And yes, I do believe that we were supposed to be there. I believe that even though we cannot find any link in terms of ancestors through this current life, there is some connection between us, a family of 7, and the Arnolds or the Richardsons or whomever has lived in that farm. 8 generations of people lived in that farm before our arrival, and a lot of people lived and died on that property, and a lot of them never left for one reason or another. Either it was because they took their own lives, or they died so tragically or so suddenly that they don't know they're dead, or that they just fear, because of how they lived their lives, that crossing over could mean an eternity in hell.
We were just talking about synchronicity, and we just spoke to, Lucy and I actually just did an interview a few weeks back with the director Eric Walter of the film My Amityville Horror, which is a case that Ed and Lorraine Warren had also investigated. And it was a documentary about one of the children, the son, Daniel Lutz, of that home. And the documentary was very powerful, and it showed Daniel Lutz in a very confused, almost disoriented, detached sort of feeling and mood and attitude towards life, its family, and everything else. How has it that you, and I've heard interviews and I've seen you at some cons around the country. How has it that you have your head on straight? You seem to be so normal. Had it affected you mentally, spiritually? I mean, I'm pretty sure spiritually, but I mean, had the experience affected you mentally in any way?
I would say emotionally. It was a real ordeal to write these books emotionally. Not the actual writing of them, but having to dredge the quagmire, as it were. And then to be able to sit there and find a way to tell the story that is clear and concise, but descriptive, so that the reader feels that they experienced it as well. And so it was easy to escape into the craft of the writing to avoid some of the emotion. But there were times that I simply could not avoid. I could not avoid the emotion wrapped up in this. And I can't tell you. I mean, the six women in my family, buckets of tears were shed during the course of the telling of some of these stories, and Cindy was the most forthcoming of all. And talk about bearing your soul. She would sit here with me for hours and hours on the sofa. We'd pull the sofa up near my desk, and she'd just sit there and talk, and I would type as fast as my fingers would go. And it was just one thing after another, and some of them were vivid to me, some of them were vague, some I didn't know about at all. I never told anybody for all these years about recognizing the woman on the hearthstone, that I recognized myself as her, because I didn't want them to spend their lives worrying about what I had now suddenly become burdened with, which was the notion of coming back to that farm repeatedly. I truly, truly hope that by telling their tale fairly and well, and by giving them all due credit, that it helps them in some way transcend. I don't know if they will or they won't, but I certainly hope that it allows me to transcend, so that I am not condemned to go back to that house again in my next life.
Has it gotten any easier? I mean, you mentioned that, sitting with Lorraine and watching the film brought you to tears. Has thinking about this experience and talking about it, probably now more than ever, has it gotten any easier?
Well, yes and no. It's never really easy. There are times that I'll be talking about something and I'll feel it start welling up in me. It's a visceral reaction that I truly can't avoid. Mm-hmm. But it is easier now that I'm right at the very end process of this trilogy, and in my mind's eye, I can see how the whole thing has unfolded. Writing it actually taught me a lot of lessons and taught me reinforced what I had learned on a subconscious level and really brought it to the surface. And I do feel very calm inside about it, and I feel like I have things to tell people, and I feel that about what happened, more about than what actually happened, more about it than what actually happened. Now what actually happened is down on paper, and people can read it for themselves. What I find most comforting and most comfortable in terms of discussing it is the why and what it means in terms of our spiritual development, our collective spiritual development as human beings. I think that because there were so many witnesses, because so many people knew about this story 30 and 40 years ago, in terms of the validation around it, all those bases are covered, and I don't care who doesn't believe. As I stated earlier, it doesn't matter. The important thing is to share it and to examine it. And the greatest accolade that I've received so far is notification that it's being studied on a college campus. I've been invited to speak at the New England Institute of Technology about the merging of faith and science and the doors which will be opened because of this story. A quantum physicist told me that it's empirical evidence of the existence of the fourth dimension. That's what I needed to hear. That's everything that I needed to hear. And then on the other hand, the letters I receive where people tell me I've been holding this in since I was, a kid. This is what happened to me. And when people share their stories, I say, please post that somewhere. Write that down. Save it for posterity. This is so important. This is one film clip at a time, one paragraph at a time, one photograph at a time, one image capture at a time. This is the evidence that we need. It opens the story, touches people's hearts, but it opens their hearts to share what they've experienced as well. And in that way, it's creating its own momentum. It's got its own volition behind it now because it's changing the way people think and it's making them feel safe to tell their own truth. And, what a gift. Now, and if we had to suffer all of that to see this eventual outcome, this gradual assimilation of how we processed it and then putting it into words and giving it to the world, then it was worth all of it. And I might be the only person in the family that says that, and I speak for myself. For myself, it was worth it.
Well, Andrea, we have a caller on the line. Would you mind if we took a call?
Oh, I'd love that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Hello. You're on the air with Anthony, Luci, and Andrea. Who is this? Hello?
Hi.
Hi. Do you have a question for Andrea?
Yeah.
Okay. Who am I speaking with?
I'm here, honey. You're talking with Andrea and Luci.
Hi.
Hi. You have a question for me, sweetheart?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Ask your question.
Okay. If the house was haunted, why couldn't you guys move away from it, and why didn't you guys have a paranormal team investigate it to see if they could get the ghosts to go away or what was wrong with the house and why they were there?
Well, we did have a lot of paranormal investigation go on there with Mr. and Mrs. Warren. And there were a lot of reasons that we had to stay at the house, including the fact that right after we moved in to the house, the entire American economy tanked. And it was during the Nixon administration and the onset of Watergate, and there was incredible turmoil in the country over the Vietnam War, and there was great fear and consternation. There was a semi-collapse of the stock market, and the Arab oil embargo was established, and that all happened in a very short amount of time. There were gas lines. You had people would run out of gas waiting in line to get gas, and cars would have to be pushed up into place to buy gasoline in this country. And there are a lot of people that are alive now that weren't alive when this was happening, and so have no first-hand memory of it. But as soon as we moved into the house, the property value started to plummet, as did the property value of every home in America at that time. So what we just went through in 2008 was very similar, and in some respects not even as bad as what happened in the recession of 1970, 71, 72. That was a really hard time in this country, and my parents would have lost everything had we moved into the house, learned that there were spirits and ghosts in it, which it never even occurred to us to think that way moving in. We thought we were moving into a charming old house. And It was also a matter of us loving this place. We loved this place, and it was a paradise, and we didn't want to abandon it. And had we tried to sell it immediately, the first question that anyone would have asked is, if you just bought it, why are you trying to sell it? What's wrong with it? So,
right.
There were 1,000 different reasons, really, all the dynamics set up for my parents to really have no choice but to stay in terms of fiscal responsibility to the family. But the most important answer to that question, and I think the one that's the big picture, is we were supposed to be there for 10 years. We were supposed to see what we saw, hear what we heard, feel what we felt, be touched the way we were by spirit, so that in its right and proper time, this story could be told. And I don't understand. I'm not a fatalist, and I'm not one who believes in determination versus free will. I think that we do possess free will. We could have left the farm. We could have turned and walked away and abandoned it and gotten an apartment and rebuilt our lives. Yes, we could have done that. But it was everything conspired to get us there, and then everything conspired to keep us there. And that's the answer to that question.
Have you been back to the property?
Oh, gosh, many times. Me more so than anybody, because I'm friends with the current owners, and they've been there a long time. And they've always warmly welcomed me to the farm, and I'm allowed to go there whenever I want. And they're lovely, wonderful people. I go back pretty frequently. First of all, I was the only one that moved back to Rhode Island and stayed there for many, many years. I came to Georgia with my family when the farm was sold in 1980, and then I returned to Rhode Island in 1987. So I was there for many years, and even before they owned it, I would go there. And I never went into the house, and I never introduced myself to whoever was there, and for a long time it was vacant. So I didn't try to go in. I didn't feel a compulsion to go in. I would just walk down to the river and sit on the bridge and remember the times that we had as children and look at the little dam that my father built for us so that we'd have a wading pool all those decades before that was so well built it's still there in perfect condition. When you have that to go back to, it really is a remarkable thing, and I do feel very called there, and every time I walk in that house, I'm recognized, and something happens, so that we're told that I've been recognized. But it's a marvelous, magical place, and I'll tell you one of the things that's most interesting about it, and I don't understand this, but I will tell you what happens. I have two friends, one who is profoundly hard of hearing, and one who is sight impaired. And each time they've been at the farm, their infirmity is gone until they leave the farm, and then it returns. One can hear perfectly while she's there, but once she drives away from the property, her hearing loss returns, and the one who has a significant loss of sight, again, loses the sight driving off that property. It's like driving into an alternate existence.
I was just going to say that. It's maybe the dimensional factor in that area, in that location.
I think that that's something that should be studied. I think that eventually, I hope to have it back and to turn it into a beautiful center of not only spiritual study and integration, because I believe that integration is essential to understanding. But I also think that it should be a place where people who are very serious-minded about paranormal investigation have access to. I think that's critically important. So I have my plans and my wishes and my dreams, and I'm a very fortunate woman because I get to live my dreams. Not everybody gets to say that in this life. So I spend every moment of my life in profound gratitude.
Well, I just want to ask this, Andrea. What was the most frightening experience you had in that home?
The night of the seance when I thought I watched my mother perish. It was the only time in 10 years that I was absolutely terrified. And whatever did that to her had absolutely had the power to take her life, and it chose not to. It wasn't that she was spared as much as it chose not to kill her. It meant to make its presence known to everyone that was witnessing this event.
At this point in your life, and you did mention this earlier, at this point in your life, do you have, maybe not the answer, maybe an inkling as to why the things happened in the house? Why the Perron family? Why you? And why that house in Rhode Island?
Well, I guess really you could say life's not a crapshoot. It's not a random series of events. And there are a lot of great arguments against what I just said, philosophical arguments. But I absolutely know that we are essentially spiritual beings. I know. That's all I know. It really is. That's all I know in a nutshell. So, class dismissed.
It's an honest answer. Honest answer.
I don't know anything more than that. I have my suspicions. I have my intellectual conjecture. I have my faith and philosophy to fall back on, and I am essentially a pagan at heart. I don't practice any given religion, but I'm a deeply, deeply spiritual person. I think that organized religion is the scourge of this planet. And frankly, I would like to see all of them dissipate into the ether like the ghost.
I knew there was a reason why I loved you.
I mean, when you think about it, just think about the people that were just killed in the Crusades. The brutality, man's inhumanity to man, the absolute unacceptable barbarism that has occurred in the name of the most holy Jesus Christ that walked this earth as a man of peace and said, love thy neighbor. Tolerance is essential to good character. Peace be with you.
Right.
And the heinous crimes against humanity which have occurred in the name of Jesus Christ. And we could talk about Muhammad, and we could talk about the Buddha, and, the messages that these great minds brought to the earth were essentially the same. Love, love, love. And what we see is hate and fear and killing and death and maiming and the brutality that seems to be intrinsic to our human nature, particularly male human nature. I don't believe that this world will be saved until women pretty much take over the planet. I mean, there are some men, okay, we'll keep you. But,
thank you.
You sound special. I have several in mind that, I would like to elevate to my own status as female. They're that wonderful. But there are many men on this planet, the dictators and the power mongers and the warmongers on this planet, who single-handedly alter the course of human history. They are the personification of evil on this planet. They are pestilence and must be wiped out one way or the other. And if that means that we turn our backs on them and say, you know what, you're a nut job and we're not following you anymore. And so go crawl off to the desert. Until we, in vast numbers as a human society, start to turn our backs on that, we will not fully vanquish evil. But I absolutely believe that we are perfectly capable of vanquishing evil. The vast majority of human beings are good, kind, generous, loving souls who adore their families and work hard to live a good, pure, character-driven life. The vast majority of people are like that. And so the others are outnumbered, first and foremost. But they also put themselves, they navigate their way into positions of power. And that's where, the source of that power needs to be cut off. It needs to be unplugged. And then we'll really, really see changes occurring. We have really significant problems occurring on this planet. We are poisoning the Pacific Ocean. We are absolutely decimating our plant life. We are wiping out our rainforest at the rate of 5,000 to 8,000 square miles a day.
Yes, we are.
A day. That's where the earth breathes from. We are wiping out the most beautiful animals off the planet since the turn of the last century. More than 100 breeds of wildcats have been made extinct because they had pretty fur on their bodies.
Yeah.
I think it's time to declare open season on the poachers. I think it's time to declare open season on the pedophiles. I think it's time to declare open season on Congress, and I think it's time to declare open season on anything that is harmful, anyone that is harmful to the greater good of our evolution as a species. We need to stop playing with fire, and we cannot control nuclear power. We cannot ultimately control it. Fukushima Daiichi is proof of that. They will not discuss what is going on because they've got a meltdown going on there that cannot be controlled, and they're pumping billions of gallons of the pure Pacific Ocean through that facility and then back out the other side. God only knows what it's doing to the life in that ocean. Mm-hmm. We are killing our planet. There are several very serious breaks in our food chain. We have created a global climate initiative of evil against our own planet with what we pour into our atmosphere and into our water, and we are killing ourselves, and we are the only species on the planet that fouls its own nest. You put all of that into one thing, and I say it's time to learn the lessons from the House of Darkness, House of Light, and take the quantum leap forward into what does this mean and how does it impact our future. Sorry.
Exactly.
Ooh, I just got on my soapbox. Ooh, let me get down before I faint. Oh, a guy fall off my heels.
No.
You are the most insightful person that I have ever known. I do those things too, Andrea, and I get on my soapbox at times, and time doesn't exist when that happens. So I get it. I understand completely, but it needs to be said. Everything that you've just said is truth. You have not said one bit of lie. I can vouch for that because everything that you've said you see on the news. Everybody watches it, but nothing is being done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Evil is an intangible. We see manifestations of it, myriad manifestations of it. But evil itself is an intangible. Good is an intangible. It's an intention. It's the essential truth of the universe. It is in all of us. I mean, we have now come full circle to your first question, and evil exists in every single one of us. And now let's go back to the old Cherokee proverb of the grandfather teaching the grandson.
I was just thinking of that.
There are two wolves inside of you, and they are fighting. And the boy says, which one wins? And he says, the one you feed.
Mm-hmm.
We are responsible for our own consciousness and our own consciousness raising. And there is no excuse for ignorance in a world that is wired for sound with the Internet.
You know, people are probably thinking right now, you know, this is a paranormal show. What are we talking about? Why are we going into this direction? But you know what? It has everything to do with the paranormal. Everything, because when you research, when you investigate, when you read books, when you do anything and everything in regards to the paranormal, it's life. It's not just on the other side. It's what you are living in right now, the reality, the quote-unquote reality that you are living in right now. That's paranormal. It's what you accept, what you understand, what you educate yourself with, where you get your knowledge from, and how you then incorporate that in your life. Because everything that I've learned in the paranormal, I've taken upon within myself, and how that affects me in my everyday life, how I have relationships with people, how I conduct work, or how I conduct my abilities in anything that I do. That's what I'm taking with it. And what I believe, what your encounter and what your experiences have done with you, for you, is uplifted you and have awakened your eyes, have awakened your soul enough to the point where you are seeing things for how they are, because you're not afraid of what's happening at the end of your life anymore. You now know what needs to be done here and now, and for you to speak up about it is so much about the paranormal that I don't even have words to say.
What we do in this life has consequence, and the spirits that are earthbound, that are tethered to this earth because of fear and because of heinous acts against them in this life that they were unable to reconcile. My sense of them is this: they cannot move on. And the reason is because of what transpired in their lives. We must take our initiative to make sure that our lives transpire in such a way that we are driven by the good, and that we disperse only the good, that we do unto others as though we are the others, because we are the others. And the spirits are us, and we are the spirits. And the only way, you know, I'll tell you how bodacious I am. I went to a Paracon a few weeks ago called Through the Veil, and stood up and said, there is no veil. The veil is the illusion. It is just like the word coincidence. We made it up because we needed to create little children see their grandparents and their great-grandparents and the auntie that comes to tuck them in at night. And they say, oh, and my friend. And Mommy says, oh, honey, that's your imaginary friend. It's just your imagination. And that's when the wall starts going up. And if you live in an environment long enough that you realize there is no veil, and you continue to see because your mom sees and isn't saying to you, you made that up. That's your fake friend, you know, or that's, you didn't see what you thought you saw. When Mommy's seeing it too, and everyone's talking about it and validating it with each other, it creates an entirely new awareness. And you go from living in a normal existence to, I call it the new paranormal. You become so accustomed to it. Case in point, by the time we left that house, if we went bolting through the kitchen and what we used to disrespectfully call the kitchen witch, we stopped doing that. If she was sweeping the floor, it was like, you know what, you go ahead, I'm out of here. You know, it was just that, okay, yeah, she's here again. You know, or Mom, they're standing at the top of my stairway again. Would you go through the back part of the house so I don't have to walk through them? You know, it becomes normal. And when you assimilate to that extent, you cannot help but be enlightened. But make no mistake about it, enlightenment is a painful, disruptive process to the human psyche. It's not easy. There's nothing easy about it. It's not all light and love and meditation. It's very difficult to come to terms with one's own immortality because it forces you to treat your mortality with more respect.
Right.
Well, I have so much respect for you, Andrea. I know a lot of people came looking to hear a scary story and looking to hear about, what was scary and what happened. But you know what? What I've gotten from this, from speaking with you, is just a wonderful, wonderful sense of how the paranormal truly is part of everything. It's part of these experiences. It's part of everything that you've talked about. The actions that we do now will become part of what we experience on the other side. And everything that we do, like you said, has a consequence.
Everything. Every decision we make, every breath we take has a consequence, and it affects the entire universe, not just us, not just our immediate environment, not just our planet. Everything that we do affects the entire universe. We are all entirely integrated with the whole. And when you get to that point where you feel so minute and so insignificant, you reach a point of merging with the whole. And when you reach that point, you realize how enormous you really are, how significant you really are to this life. And that's when the messages come. That's when the clarity comes to a clairvoyant. That's when the heightened sensitivity comes into someone who has been turning their back on what they remember from childhood. That's what changes the human consciousness and alters our awareness, and that is the point of enlightenment. It's an ongoing process. It's a transformation which is occurring, and it's occurring all over the planet. It's occurring in ways that I never thought I would see. Look at the changes that are taking place all over this planet. A little girl that stands up after taking a bullet in the brain and stands in front of the United Nations and says every child on this planet has a right to an education, every single one of us. And had I had the gun and that bullet was coming at me, I would not shoot my assailant, because that's not the way to live. I mean, this child, I hope she rules the world someday. That's my point of inspiration. That's my point of light, is little Malala.
Yeah.
That's what inspires me.
Mm-hmm.
She is a miracle. She's a miracle. The children that are being born to a newly awakened awareness in their parents are benefiting enormously from what their parents are imparting to them. And that's what will change the world. It just needs to happen faster, because we are running out of time.
Yes, we are. Andrea, this has been a brilliant and fascinating interview. Where can our listeners go to learn more about you and your books?
Well, I have a really groovy website that we just updated for the release of the film, and it's houseofdarknesshouseoflight.com. Probably not the most original, but it takes you right to the source. And I have a rockin' personal Facebook page that's very meditative. I post beautiful photographs and artwork and music and poetry, the best quotations. It's a great place to go and just hang out. But then I also have my House of Darkness, House of Light Facebook page, where you can find out everything about the forthcoming book and the movie and all the premieres and all that stuff. So that'll keep you up to date. That's kind of like the business end of me. But my personal Facebook page is my favorite place to go. The people there are just amazing. And I need to say hi to Thomas and Carrie Solkowski, who I met on Facebook and who I'm about to meet in person in Aiken at the big Paracon I'm going to on the 27th and 28th. It's the only public appearance I am making for the rest of the year that isn't on behalf of the film and Warner Brothers. So this is, my place. But we're going to run The Conjuring all weekend long at the local theater, which is going to be great. And I'm just going to go up there and just set them all on fire, because my presentation is that Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. So anyone that shows up there better expect to be going to Andrea Church, because I'm going to give them a show, honey.
Are you doing anything special for the premiere day?
Actually, our entire family has gathered. In fact, the beep that you heard at 11 o'clock was my sister April calling in to test the waters to see if I was done with this interview. No, I'm not. And my sister Nancy just came up from Florida. Dad's on his way. He'll be up tomorrow. And we're going to have our first family portrait taken since 2004, and that'll be great. And that's going to be the new banner on my Facebook page, so that's really cool. And then
great.
We're all flying to L.A. 5 of us of the 7 are flying to L.A. for the premiere in Hollywood. And then the girls are flying back here to Atlanta. I'm going to Rhode Island with my dad. He's my, he helps me so much. There are no words. My book-toting dad, and we're going to do a series of book signings, and I'm trying to get the theater in downtown Harrisville so that I can do a really big, free, open to the public thank you very much to a town full of people who have supported this from the inception, who have been there for me. I mean, people that I have found after, my high school and junior high school friends. The people that, and some of whom have written to me and said, I'm so sorry I made fun of you about that all these years ago. Please forgive me. Will you please friend me on Facebook? I'm like, yes. All is forgiven, you little bully. I hope you learned your lesson. Everything. It's just been an absolute whirlwind. I mean, going on the trip to Miami was truly a spectacular event for me. I got to speak with a huge Hispanic community there. And, I mean, millions and millions of people over the course of the, 3 days that I was there that I was able to connect with on a profoundly spiritual level. It was a remarkable, absolutely remarkable experience. And, I'm going to stay in Rhode Island for about a week and hit all my favorite haunts, including the farm. I'm going to go see my friends. And then back to Atlanta and then out to Aiken, South Carolina. And then I think I'll just collapse for a little while.
I can imagine. Well, Andrea, thank you. Thank you for coming on tonight. Thank you for speaking with us. And you know what? Please feel free to come back anytime you feel like it.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I'll tell you, you're a real... this is just a wonderful, wonderful program. Your insightful questions. Mom says that I row the stream of consciousness, sometimes with one oar, and the way that you pulled me back in and kept me, I appreciate that. It was excellent discourse. Want people, if they want the books, I would suggest going directly to the source, which is my publisher, Author House, because they can save $5 a volume, and they're a little pricey because they're so big. So, that $5 matters. And just click on authorhouse.com and go to the bookstore and just order Volume 1 or Volume 2. Volume 3 should be out, I would say, within a month. And, I don't think I'd be more than a few days off from that. So... everything's falling together now in terms of getting the end story out, but Amazon carries it. You can find it anywhere. There's 25,000 booksellers worldwide. Either it's in brick and mortar stores or you can buy it online. It's just everywhere. And I am so delighted and thrilled to share this evening with you. I promise you that I will come back. I will try to answer your questions succinctly, and I'll try even harder. I'm kind of out there tonight. I'm kind of out there.
We know.
Tonight.
It's been a long day for you. So, you know what, darling? Get some rest, and thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. Have a lovely evening, both of you, and I'll talk to you soon. And good night to all of your folks in the chat room and everybody that listened. And I love you all. I love you because you exist. I love you all.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Andrea. Take care now.
Bye-bye.
Good night, darlings. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. What an amazing woman.
What an amazing evening.
you had just mentioned this before, that, I thought the interview was going to be, sort of mostly about the house and the experiences, but what it developed into and what it created for me was not so much an interview, but more so of an experience. I mean, she took us on this journey. Yes, we visited the farmhouse, but we traveled into the psyche of Andrea. We into her family, and the poetic words is the only thing that comes to mind that she exuberated here tonight. I think can only be taken as insightful. I don't think anything that she has said tonight was meant as damaging or as a a finger in your face type of thing. She's being real. She's being very truthful, and this is something that is very near, dear, spiritual, emotionally for her, and so I get it that she wants to express it in that way.
I am so honored that she opened up like that. Like I said before, I know people wanted to hear about this house and the scary parts about it, but you can see the movie. This was an opportunity to actually see who Andrea is, to see the results of what has happened to her, to get to know a beautiful person. And I am just, right now, I mean, it's like a breath of fresh air. It's just like I feel, like you said, this was an experience. And I'm hoping that our listeners got that same kind of experience, to be able to talk to someone and to hear exactly what she has to say. And she's not afraid to say it. And just that in itself is brilliant and very, very rare.
I do want to, I actually copied and pasted something that Andrea wrote. It's actually a quote. It's actually something that is put up on the screen at the end of one of her YouTube videos. And I just thought it was really profound, very impactful, I guess, collection of words is the only thing that comes to mind right now, that I just wanted to share with everybody. She actually touched a little bit on some of this during the interview, but here is something that when I read it at the end of the video, I actually had to rewind it and I wanted to read it again, and so much so that I actually copied it and now want to read it for everybody else, because I think it's just really profound, really straightforward. There's no blurring of these lines here at all. So here's something that I want to read from Andrea Perron. There are no answers afforded, merely clues to an afterlife which occurs after death. Each of us must cope with our own fear of the unknown. It is a daunting task for anyone who thinks about their existence upon the sphere within the realm of the universe. For those exposed to spirits as they manifest, the spiritual realm becomes an integral part of the whole of nature around us. We begin to assimilate the knowledge, placing together the cosmic pieces of an ever-expanding puzzle, one with no border, no end, quite like infinity. To accept a single interlude into your thought process means you are willing to engage in nothing less significant than an eternal dialogue regarding your own immortality. By doing so, you choose to embrace a lifelong dilemma. There is nothing simple or easy about acquiring this type of spiritual enlightenment. It will slap you across the face with its reality, impaling your eyes and mind with images too harsh to abide. Close encounters of this kind provide us more questions than answers. They create visceral sensations, often provoking reactions of inspiration and consternation in equal measure, nothing comfortable about it. There is no escaping unscathed as long as our memory remains intact. Fascinated by the sometimes repulsive aspects of these poor souls who linger tethered to earth while suspended in the ether, we continue to search evermore for the ones who hold the key to Pandora's box. Why? Ultimately, we have no concept of our existence, and this knowledge is what chills us to the bone. I thought that was just the most beautiful thing that anyone can write, in regards to an experience that she has gone through, and then to give an insight, sort of a little bit of a snippet of what is in the psyche of Andrea Perron.
Mhm. And it's true. Everything that she touched on, to investigate, to deal with the paranormal, is more than just going to a site, and it's more than just picking up an EVP or getting a picture of an apparition. She touched on the fact that this is all one big, everything is connected. I mean, everything becomes clearer as we go along, how connected everything is. Now, in my own mind, I'm thinking every single action I take, everything that I move and do and say affects how I communicate with not only the people in this life, but on the other side. It's just amazing. And I think because she's gone through this and because of the things that have happened to her and her family, she is just well-equipped to help others understand. Everything happens for a reason. I truly believe this. Whatever, like she said, whatever happened in that house, whatever experiences they had, happened. And she definitely is one of the voices that are bringing that awareness of what the paranormal truly is. And I applaud her, and I am so honored that we spoke with her.
I think one of the shocking pieces of information that I had received prior to tonight's interview was the fact that she did call her experience and the culmination of her volumes of her book, House of Darkness, House of Light, was that it's a love story. And I had asked her that question. It kind of tricks your mind a little bit to the idea that somebody's going to call this a love story when you've got such horrific experiences that you're telling. And I kind of came to the sensation that in order to create that love story, her being so young in that home, and as she's mentioned, her and her sisters developed a relationship with the ghosts. And I think that's what's helped her come to grips with the idea of, first of all, mortality and immortality, but also it created that beautiful connection, that communication that she was able to achieve at such a young age with the other side. And it's that communication, that reaching out to a lost soul that is repeating things over and over again, or in some cases where I've heard her say that some of the spirits, or one spirit in the home at least, does not even know that they are passed. And, to me, that's very sad. That's such a sad concept to comprehend. And I think it was a young spirit that is going through that. And so for her to, and her sisters, to be able to reach out to these spirits and try and help, try and communicate, I think that's where the love story comes into effect. Now, I don't think we really touched on it tonight, but because it's called House of Darkness, House of Light, there is an evil side to this house. And these spirits, these lost souls, are pretty much being tormented by this evil presence, entity, whatever, and has been tormented the family as well. And so I think, again, that's where that love story comes into effect, because it seemed as though to me, from reading everything, that her and her family were trying to save these lost souls. And I get it now as to the reason why she does call it a love story.
Well, it is. I mean, it's. I couldn't get my head around that concept at first too, but after speaking to her, I totally get it. I totally understand it now, and it's like that connection. That it's not taking the entities that are there and treating them just as a spirit, just as a haunting. It is connecting,
or lumping them, or even lumping them all together as evil. It is. Some people tend to do that when, you really have to connect with the spirits itself to find out whether they're lost souls, whether they're lost spirits, whether they're good spirits, angels, what have you, and what are the evil spirits, the bad spirits, the demonics, all of that stuff. And people tend to lump that all together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's a side effect of what the media puts forth. What we see scary movies and we read all about these things, and I think it gives the evil side of things a little bit more strength in what is being presented. I mean, the bottom line is that love is the strongest thing, and I think if there is that love and there is that clearness in your heart, and we've talked about this so many times, it's what's in your heart that makes the difference when you connect. If you have a pure heart, if your intentions are good, I think that connection comes across so easily and so effortlessly, as opposed to, going in without it. And I think that if there is evil there, of course, yes, there's evil. There's an evil side to things. But I also think that love and that pureness goes a long way to protect you and to isolate you from that evil. Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, and I'm not saying that evil does not exist and it doesn't manifest itself in a way where people can be harmed. But I also truly believe, for my own self, that pureness of heart and that love will help protect you when you're dealing with such things.
Well, the movie is called The Conjuring. It's by Warner Brothers, and it is out next Friday, July 19th. And I was just noticing in chat that people are talking about whether or not, or they're hoping that, the movie is close to the book, or the books, because there's 3 volumes, close to what Andrea had written down in the books, as close as possible. Now, Andrea had even mentioned it earlier when we were talking to her, that you really can't put 10 years into a 2-hour movie. It just is virtually impossible. But she did mention that she has seen the movie, and the parts that the director put into the final version, and the way that you will see the movie this coming Friday, it is satisfactory to them. It tells the story. It tells what the meaning of those 10 years was about. It may not have everything. Obviously, you're going to read a lot more of the stories in House of Darkness, House of Light, in her book, and you're going to learn more details about things. But the movie, I think, really does portray the Perron family and Ed and Lorraine Warren as best as possible to get the point across, to get the feeling in you of what that story is ultimately all about. And I'm really excited. I really do want to see this movie. Are you excited for this movie, Luci?
Yes, I am. You know what? I think I'm more excited about finishing the book as opposed to the movie. I want to know Andrea's total side of it, and then I want to go in. I'm excited about the movie. The trailers are awesome. They're frightening as heck. The soundtrack is right up my alley. But I really want this is a story. I mean, it's so unusual. This is a story that I want every single aspect of it. I am so excited about this whole movie and book that I want every inkling of, I want every piece of information I could get. And listening to Andrea tonight and speaking with her just it was a present. It was a gift. It gives me so much more that when I go and I finish the book now, I also know how she feels. I can feel it. I mean, it is just, this is something special. Both the movie and the book, I think they're very special. And I really, really, really want to see the movie. And I want to finish the book.
Well, I mean, in my day job, I work for an entertainment company. And the buzz that's been going around about this particular movie, The Conjuring, has, I think, far succeeded what I remember for the first of the series of the Paranormal Activity movies that had come out. And there wasn't anything unique about the marketing or promotion for this movie at all. It was basic trailer snippets that they had played on television, and I think some I think online as well. I think I've seen some of that pop-up ads that come up. But there's a lot of buzz going on about this movie, and I think because it may have to do with the fascination with Ed and Lorraine, because because Andrea's story has been labeled by Lorraine Warren as the most horrific case that she has ever investigated in her entire career. Now, you take that you take that statement, and then you look back and you sort of bring up what other cases Ed and Lorraine had investigated, and the one that comes to mind is what, Lucy?
Amityville.
And we all know that story. We've seen, I think, 1 billion and one movies already and documentaries on that, and how horrific that story is. Excuse me. And not everything in that movie, or in those movies for the Amityville, have been released. I mean, there are stories that Daniel Lutz, who we've learned about when we had the interview a couple of weeks back, that there are stories that have never been told yet from that movie. Now, if you can label Amityville Horror as a really scary movie, I could only imagine what will be revealed to us in the movie The Conjuring next week, and about Andrea's story and how it's being portrayed. I mean, excuse me, it's one thing to read a story, because when you read a book, you are visualizing, you are playing the director, the producer, the videographer. You are creating those visuals in your head. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. But when you actually sit in front of a screen and watch a movie and seeing it portrayed out for you, I think it's going to be fascinating to see how it's being incorporated on the big screen, and how the director was able to take Lorraine and Andrea's stories and put them together in order to give us the story of that farmhouse in Rhode Island. And if they're already talking about it and saying that this is a really frightening movie, a really horrific movie, I am really curious to actually buy the tickets and go.
Mhm. Well, you know what? I know we didn't talk. We didn't even touch on the Warrens, and that's probably a whole separate show. But just the involvement of Lorraine in this whole situation and everything that they've said is another added thing that makes me really want to see this.
And we should tell everybody that you, Lucy, actually tried to reach out to Lorraine to see if we can get her on the show.
Yes,
but I think it was too late to. I mean, because we actually were working on this so hard, you more than I have, tried to get Andrea on, and getting word back from Warner Brothers. We got the word back, I think it was, Tuesday or Wednesday maybe? Just 2 days ago that this show was going to happen, and so it was just a little too late to get Lorraine on the air with us, but we would love to, and maybe we'll hopefully get her on in the future again and talk about everything in their career for investigating. So is there anything that you wanted to sum up before we get on to the rest of what we do on the show?
No. You know what? I just want to say that I want everybody to please, you've got to read the book, and then you've got to see this movie. What is being presented
Not necessarily in that order. You can watch the movie and then read the book.
But you really need to, if you're if you're into the paranormal, I think this is a brilliant opening. This is a window, another little window that has been opened that gives us a little bit more insight into what it is, what the paranormal is. like Andrea said, we're not going to get all the answers. Everything that happens to us just brings up more and more questions. But that's the beauty of the journey. And it's not so much the destination, it's the journey that counts.
All right, great. So who's the Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week?
Oh, let's see. The Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week. Some of you might know who this person is. This week, our Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week is Jonathan Hodges of Huntsville, Alabama. You might know Jonathan from Sci-Fi's Deep South Paranormal. He is known as the leader of the Deep South team. He was born and raised in the country outside of Huntsville, Alabama, and he applies science and inventive tactics to investigating. He has a passion for the outdoors and everything paranormal. His interest in the paranormal began in the house where he grew up, and it continues to this very day. Jonathan likes Paranormal Review Radio, and he comments quite often on our Facebook page. We are very happy to call him a friend, and this week's Paranormal Review Fan of the Week. Thank you, Jonathan, for being a fan, and congratulations. And, you know, we are hoping to see a second season of Deep South Paranormal. So please, please keep us posted.
Absolutely. Jonathan, you are awesome. We love your comments. And, hey, you know, you gave a shout-out to Luci, I think it was last week. What about me? Lucy's your girl, but, you know, I'm still here, too. All right, guys, don't forget. Yeah, I know. Don't forget, if you want to be a Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week, just like us on our Facebook page, Paranormal Review Radio.
Okay, you ready for this?
I'm ready.
If you've seen the trailer for The Conjuring, you know how scary this movie looks. If you have read Andrea Perron's book, House of Darkness, House of Light, you know what an experience that was. Now, many of us have never, ever come close to experiencing what Andrea and her family has gone through. Some of us have, and because of that, you may understand what happened to this family. Either way, the story that Andrea tells so eloquently is one that is going to fascinate you, and it's going to frighten you enough that you may want to leave the lights on when you go to bed tonight. We do want to thank Andrea again for sharing her insights, for talking with us tonight. It was absolutely amazing. And we do want to thank Warner Brothers for their help in putting together tonight's show. So, are you ready? You know, all this talk of spirits tonight has made us think about what we love, paranormal investigating. And it's been a while since our last investigation, so it's about time for a road trip, don't you think? We're going to fix that. It is time for another Paranormal Review live investigation. Next Friday night, we will be broadcasting live as we investigate Fort Mifflin in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Anthony and I will be wandering the grounds of this historical site, and as always, we want you to be there with us from the comfort of your own home. We want all of you armchair investigators to call us while we're live on the air and to help us connect with the spirits that haunt this amazing location. Now, we've got a couple new things that we're going to try, so please, you got to be sure to join us next Friday, July 19th, for our live investigation of Fort Mifflin. And then you need to be sure to join us the week after, July 26th, for our Evidence Reveal show. You want to add anything else to that, Anthony?
No, I'm just really excited. I've got some things. Actually, Lucy, I just told you about one thing that just arrived in the mail today that we're going to try out. So I'm really excited. And just like Lucy said, you know, we go to these locations. It's just Lucy and I, and it's not fair. And it's not fair to our listeners, and so we always extend that invitation to everyone who listens to us week after week, or if you're a new listener, we invite you as well to come onto the show and call in, because what we can do is even though you're not at the location, your voice will be at that location. You will be able to ask the spirits a question. We will first review, obviously the history, some of the ghostly encounters, so that you have an idea of what is going on in whatever particular location that we are at Fort Mifflin. And so we encourage everyone to then call in and ask a question. Maybe, actually, Luci, just to be completely honest, in previous live investigations that we've done, some of the callers' questions have actually helped the investigation and has helped bring on more communication for us. So we really do need your help out there. So go to our Facebook page probably tomorrow, and we're going to put up the link for a show and for the invite just as a reminder. And we'll do that throughout the week just to remind you, and hopefully we'll see you next Friday, July 19th.
And just remember, too, from some of our previous investigations that we broadcasted, people that have listened while they're on the air, you may hear some things that we're not hearing. So we definitely do need you. There have been a couple instances where definitely people that were listening at home heard things that, had ideas about what was going on there. They gave us the information, and we were able to actually use and incorporate all of the information in the actual investigation. So I can't wait for this one. This is going to be a whole lot of fun, and I hope you all can join us. Okay? So we want to thank you, everyone, for listening and for being fans of the show. The Paranormal Review Radio family is growing every single week, and it is showing no signs of stopping. We really love all of you. Anthony, thank you so much for everything you do to make the show happen. So, until next time, Parapeeps, leave the lights on tonight and have a paranormal week. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Paranormal Review Radio. Paranormal Review Radio.